And we are live. Hello, finally. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Lynn from Cavi Central Guinea Pig Rescue. And if you've not caught us on our weekly chat, we meet here every Tuesday, aiming to be around 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. But today we ran into some technical issues, so we're a little bit behind, but that's no problem at all. We will catch up really quickly. Thank you for joining me. I can see quite a few of you in the chat. I'll bring that up onto the screen. And I please pop your questions in the chat as we go through. For some reason, I think the chat button has moved on here, which is not great. Let's see. Okay, it's not actually showing me that. Hi, Oscar. Hello. Welcome. Hi, Marsha. Welcome. Welcome. I have no idea why it's not sharing the chat with me today. Let me just open it up on another screen. Bizarre. There might be something up here. Let's see. Here we go. They've moved the button. Okay. They do this all the time on this streaming software. So that's fantastic. Hi, Karen. Welcome from the UK. We've got people from the USA. Hello and welcome. Lynn, hello. Jake, hello. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Well, today we've got a really great chat, which is all about substrate. And last week, if you go back to that chat at a later time, we discussed caging and housing for guinea pigs. In today's chat, we're going to look at what sort of bedding or substrate you need to put in your housing so that your guinea pigs are quite comfortable. And there's a lot of content I'd like to touch on and why I prefer some things over other things. A lot of it lends itself to experience and what we see over time. So while many things can seem really exciting and new when you see them on the internet, that's not always how it works out down the track. So let's dive into lots of that to work through. I've got some images for you. Let me bring them up. And again, I'd encourage you to pop your questions into the chat. And from there, we can then, I'll dive back and I'll answer those for you. So let's get this image up. We're going to move through a lot of them. There's quite a bit to cover. Okay. Here we go. Okay. The first thing is that when we are looking at what sort of substrate or bedding for your guinea pigs is suitable, it very much depends on the housing that you're using for your guinea pigs. Now, last week in the chat, we talked about indoor and outdoor or a combination of the two in terms of housing. So we have here an example of an indoor house, which is a CNC structure. And we have also an outside. This is a wooden hutch. And again, if you want to discuss, the positives, negatives about this cage, just pop back to last week's chat. But outdoor housing is much more sturdy, and there's lots of things to remember about that. All right. So when we talk about bedding, what is essential to know is that there are layers of bedding. Regardless of the housing that you have, whether it's indoors or outdoors, there will always be a top layer and there will always be a bottom layer, sometimes a middle layer, but we're going to include that in what we call the bottom layer. And the idea is that the top layer always remains dry to the touch so that your guinea pigs are not walking on anything damp or wet on the top layer. The bottom layer, and in fact, if you've got a couple of layers, a middle to bottom layer, these are your absorbent layers. And the reason I include the middle layer here is because they get damp to wet the further you go to the bottom of the cage. That is what should happen. So that, again, the guinea pigs walking on the top level are dry, but right down the bottom is where any urine will make its way down to that bottom layer. Okay. And that is the best effective way to keep your guinea pigs healthy. what we're going to look at here, excuse me, is indoor caging and some of the top layers. These tend to be the most popular top layers that you can use. And we're going to run through a number of these, and then we'll come back to the chat for lots of discussions about pros and cons. Excuse me. I've breathed something in. That's not a great idea. All right. So, first one we have here is what we call vet bed. Now, vet bed, oh, I do apologize. Vet bed is a relatively new product. It has been available around the last 5 years, I would say. And it's called vet bed because predominantly it was found in use in vet practices. And it became more commonplace with guinea pigs in the last 5 years. It's a very thick, artificially created product that you can see here. It has a very thick lining underneath and it's very fluffy on top. Now, with vet bed, it's not actually one that I prefer to use. There are areas that I prefer to use it in, and we'll come back and touch on that later. But for now, just so that you're aware of different top layers that people use for indoor housing, we have vet bed. The next one here is more commonly called fleece. And you see this in jackets, shirts, heavy, thick tops in winter, commonly called fleece jackets. And of course, for guinea pigs, we see that in cages with different patterns, not always plain. There's a variety of color and mixtures that you can have, and it's become fairly commonplace. Now, with fleece, there are pros and cons with this. But one of the things most people, when they first get guinea pigs, are not aware of is that it's not immediately absorbent. And if we have a top layer that isn't absorbent, the urine will stay on the top layer where they're walking. So we've just spoken about it needing to be layers so that it can filter down to the bottom. And we call that a wicking process that is needed with fleece. So in particular, you've got to wash fleece at least 5, 6, 7 times before you put it into use, because by that stage, it then allows the urine to flow through it. So thinking that you've got a brand new, beautiful looking fleece and you're ready to go is often a pitfall that new owners with guinea pigs make, because you need to wash this a number of times before it actually becomes free enough to let that urine go through to the lower absorbent levels. So that's fleece, and it is very commonly used. Again, not really my preference. Okay, this one here. This is called a bubble mat or toggle mat. They've not been around that long. These have only really surfaced in the last few years. And honestly, guys, thumbs up. I love them. Absolutely love them. They are fabulous to use. There's lots of pros with these, but they do come in lots of color combinations. They don't have patterns with them, but that, given all the advantages with it, which we'll touch on in a moment, I love these. I totally support them. Okay, when we're looking at cages that are outdoors, and I often see people a little bit confused about what to put in there, because you'll see those inside soft top layers being put into cages like this that are outside. There are better choices for outdoors. And let's run through the common ones. The most common of these is what we'd use as shavings, and these are kiln dried pine shavings. So they are dust free and they are extremely absorbent, and any urine that hits the top layer moves automatically right down through the pine shavings to the bottom layer. They work brilliantly. They're a natural product, and if the guinea pigs actually nibble at any of these shavings, it's not going to hurt them. So they do nibble at things, particularly bedding and other items in the caging, but it won't hurt them at all, as long as they are pine dried kiln shavings. Kiln dried pine shavings. Have I said that right? Okay, there's a number of other things that we see in use though. One of them is hemp. Now, this is a product that, again, is relatively new. It's come up in the last 5, 6 years. Mini hemp or hemp based, there's all sorts of combinations. This is just one particular brand I've put on there simply to share it with you. It's a great product. It works in the same way. And again, urine flows through from the top all the way to the bottom. It's perfectly safe to use with your guinea pigs. The one disadvantage is that it's generally quite expensive by comparison. So you're going to pay more for something like this. And then we have these pellets. Pellets are made of paper. And you can see on this example, it's for ferrets, rabbits, birds, mice. They've got all manner of animals, even a reptile around the corner. So it's suitable for lots of different animals. But I just want to look at it up close because this is what the pelleted form of these paper pellets looks like. They are absorbent, but what I find and I've found is that the pellet itself is absorbent. So if it's urinated on, it often clumps at the top level. The urine doesn't go all the way through to the bottom like it does with shavings. So you get these areas that are a little bit more clumped together on top than down the bottom. The other thing I would say is that guinea pig feet are really unfurred and very prone to all sorts of issues. So we want that ground base to be relatively soft for their little feet. So I find these a little bit hard to use. Some people prefer them. They're hard and they're a little bit heavy as well because they're quite dense in their makeup. So more on that to come. They come in different forms. Now, we don't see these much here in Australia, but wherever you are in the world, you may. And I would definitely not recommend this because of the color combination and the fact that guinea pigs can nibble on these pellets. So these are a pelleted form of paper pellet. And again, if guinea pigs nibble on it, they're also consuming that artificial color base. So, you know, I would not necessarily recommend those. People will often put into use shavings, paper shavings. Now, this is one, or shredded paper, sorry, shredded paper. And this is a commercially sold one, which has a very, very fine cut through the paper. Now, it is all pure paper, so there's no colored paper in there or mixture in there. But what I have found is that small animals can actually get their feet caught in fine paper like this. It literally can wrap around an ankle. And in that sense, they can become trapped. They can find it almost like being caught in rope. And for that reason, I don't particularly recommend this. The other thing is, if you create your own shredded paper like this here, it looks really fine when you put it in the cage. You know, it has a bit of height to it. It looks a bit fluffy, and you can imagine your animals going in amongst it. It's actually okay. Guinea pigs can nibble at paper and they will be fine if they ingest it. But the bigger problem here is that when they start urinating and moving around on this, it just flattens. It flattens to virtually nothing. So if you can imagine it being rained on or wet, it literally goes to nothing. So it doesn't provide any real ability to move that moisture away from them. So you constantly have to clean these. We've used these here in the shelter a few times when we've had them available, usually gifted to us. And I will only ever do it in the summer because in the summer months, they're not reliant on essential warmth around the animal. Shavings and a thick layer give much more ground warmth than a paper layer like this. But the other thing is you'll find they fly everywhere. You'll drop a few and they just take off. So again, not my preference. All right. Then we have another paper product, but this one is very soft to touch. It is like I guess a manufactured form of paper pulp. It's very soft to touch. A lot of people prefer this, and sometimes it comes scented, which I wouldn't recommend the scented versions because of guinea pigs' vulnerability to respiratory issues. But with this sort of clumped paper effect, again, the cost in relation to where you're putting it can be quite high, but you'll find that you have to do patchy cleans all over the place because where they urinate, it will clump and become a bit more wet rather than uniformly at the bottom of the cage. And then, of course, paper, just using paper as a means of a substrate is not what I would recommend. It is actually absorbent. So, for that reason, we classify it into the absorbent level, and putting it right at the very bottom as one of the bottom levels is how we would look to use this, not as a top level. Okay, as sometimes I see in cages, people will create a cage and they've just got paper in there. The problem is the guinea pigs urinate on the paper. The urine spreads out into a wide, wet circle. They're then walking on that and carrying that moisture with them, which is not great. Okay, so now let's take a look at, I'm just going to move my images over here a little bit. Hold on. Stay tuned, stay tuned. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at the middle layer, the bottom layer. And these are U-Haul blankets. Now, U-Haul blankets are more common in America than they are here, but they're known for their absorbency. And they commonly were used in, and still are, in furniture relocation. So you can sometimes acquire them. They are a very thick, heavy blanket that has a great capacity to absorb fluids. So they're often used as that medium to bottom layer where absorbency is required. So U-Haul blankets are an option. We have toweling, just your average toweling, whether it's a bath mat, whether it is a bath towel. They're all made of cotton, 100% cotton. They are designed to be absorbent. That's why we use them in the shower. That's why we bath with them, because we as humans know this is the best thing against our skin to absorb liquid. So they're readily available. They're often cheap, and there's something that is designed really well. Okay, then we have puppy pads, puppy pee pads, and you'll see lots of people using these. They are absorbent. They do fit really well as the bottom layer of a cage. The biggest problem I have with these is they're terrible on the environment. If you're using them all the time, all this plastic is going into the environment. Now, for that reason, I really avoid using these. And, I understand for a lot of people, they're great, they're convenient, but that is the real issue, is the environment. There are, and I will mention it here, reusable puppy pads. And this is a picture of one. So you can obtain reusable puppy pads, and they are ones that you can wash. So they are an absorbent layer that goes underneath your top layer, which we've just gone through, and they are much more absorbent, but they're washable, which is great. So it does away with the problems with hurting the environment as much. So, okay, the main thing that we need to look at here is that you have to establish what works best for you. The reason being, if it's not easy for you to do and to maintain, it then becomes work. And whenever something becomes work, it's in danger of ceasing because some other priority may fall in front of it. So the easiest way we can make a cage work for you and healthy for your guinea pigs is going to work long term and be successful for you both. And that sometimes takes a little bit of give and take. So I'm going to share with you some examples that are in our forum. I've just randomly picked these out of our forum, which is the guinea pig Cavi Savvy community. And in these few photos, you can see some combinations with what people are trying. And then we're going to come back and really nut this out together. So the first example here is an indoor cage, and you'll notice their choice is shavings. So right down the bottom of those shavings, I would opt to have layers of paper because they're going to be the most absorbent level right at the bottom. And they'll find, or you'll find in this sort of scenario, when they urinate, it just travels all the way down to the bottom. But the use of paper actually helps with getting the shavings in and out. Now, this is an indoor cage, not an outside cage, but you'll notice they have wooden flooring. So, wooden flooring, when you're trying to put shavings into a cage like this, is going to be easy to maintain because you can sweep that wooden floor. But if you have carpet, then it's going to be tricky because you will get shavings all over the carpet for inside caging. And these are the sorts of unique decisions you need to look at for your cage. Here's another great combination, and these are my favorite. They are the toggle mats or bubble mats. In actual fact, there's a bit of a combination there, I think. If you look all over the cage, so down the bottom here, we've got bubble mats all over the place. Down here, this one here is more of a bathroom fleece memory foam type mat, which works a little bit like the toggle mats. Yeah, let's just stick with the toggle mats. These ones here we can mention, but I find that they're a bit like because they've got an absorbent layer within them. The minute you step on them, like with a bath mat, it looks nice on top, but you step on it and you think, oh, it's wet. Someone's been there before. It's like stepping in their wet footprint. It can feel like that. Whereas the toggle mats, everything filters through to the lower layers. So whatever you've got underneath that, like your U-Haul blankets or other things, it will absorb at that level. Okay, we've got a fleece setup here, and this is patterned, which again looks so pretty. The colors look fantastic, but check out the size of it. It's enormous. And this can be one of the problems with fleece because generally fleece, when people get them made, they get them made to fit the size of their indoor cage. And they then discover that putting that in a washing machine can be really tricky. So quite often putting these fleece, because it's often not just the fleece that's combined in that mat, it's often the fleece plus an absorbent layer and a base. So it's generally quite thick, and going into a washing machine can cause problems where they don't fit or they don't wash properly. So that's a fleece setup. Looks fantastic though, absolutely, and is working for them. Beautifully soft on guinea pig feet. Toggle mats here, and we've also got a little tiny toggle pad that this piggy is sitting on, which is really cute. Okay, here's a combination, and these are fleece rugs. So they're just rugs or pieces of fleece that are sitting on top of something absorbent underneath, which could be toweling, could be U-Haul, could be any of those, could be puppy pads underneath there. So they're sitting on top. They provide the color and the softness of fleece. They're quite small in size, so they're not going to be as difficult to wash. And then down the end, they've actually got the area where guinea pigs can go onto some shavings. So it's a bit of a combination working for them. It's really great to see. Okay, let's come back to the chat. Hopefully you got to see all of those. Let me know if you did, because there's so many different options, and there's some amazing people out there that are making fantastic products as well, and lots and lots of issues. So I'm going to jump over to the chat first, and let's look at some of your comments, and then I really want to show you some of the items here as we talk about them together. Whew, we've been chatting in there. Hold on. It's just okay. So Jay. Okay, Jay uses a hardwood pellet as the base substrate covered with either wood shavings and or hay. Okay, so the hardwood pellets, we don't really have access to those here. I have seen hardwood pellets before, but they're quite sharp, and it's really great that you've got something on top. I guess the one thing I would look at there would be the heaviness of using, because you've got to clean that out regularly, putting that back in. And where hardwood pellets are used, they are quite heavy. So we've seen them in reptile enclosures more so, um, or for outside areas, outside enclosures. But yeah, so have a think about that. You might want to modify that a bit. If it's working for you, stay with it. If it's working for you, great. Gabby's Cavies. It's got 3 new piggies. Great. And uses fleece. Okay, fantastic. Okay, for those with allergies, what bedding do you recommend? Um, Again, you need to look at the caging. Are we talking about inside caging or outside? Now, if you're dealing with outside, I fully recommend shavings, kiln dried shavings. And because they're actually dust free, they've got the dust extracted from them, there's not a lot flying around in the air. I would actually recommend those as the best outside cage um, substrate. If we're talking about inside, um, all of them, from fleece all the way through to toggle mats, through to any of the other layers, they, because they're cloth, they don't really um, create allergies. The allergies is more likely to come from hay and the food source. Um, so perhaps jot down below if you've got some sort of allergy that's related to, like if you had an allergy to cotton, for example. I've never heard of it, but you wouldn't use toweling. You would look at a different type of product. Using the softer, yeah, if you're using any sort of inside cloth, fleece, um, through to bubble mats, none of them exhibit any sort of dust or anything into the air. So, they're going to be quite allergy free, really. Okay, so we've got Mrs. Volve. I made my fleece mats to fit a 1x2 grid and put several of these into the cage. Yeah. So the problem with fleece, as we saw with that other image, is that when people get excited about them, they think they can just lay the fleece out and it's done. One move, fleece in. The biggest problem there is washing it because they can be enormous in your washing machine. Some people have only the side on washing machines, which have a much smaller wash space than, say, the big machines that you use. Some people don't want to use a washing machine because they put their own clothing through there, which I actually recommend that you can do. You can do both, because the whole idea of washing something, it actually is stainless steel on the inside, completely and thoroughly clean before any other wash goes through. But check on your washing machine. That may have a bearing on the sort of size of the material that you want to use. Okay, so Mrs. Volve, me too. In most of my cage area, wood pellets and wood shavings in the kitchen, fleece and bubble mats. So you do like a combination of the last photo that we saw. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent, excellent. I have done tests here in the shelter where I've had half the cage on fleece, half the cage on shavings, and I always find the piggies actually prefer the shavings. It's really interesting. So, yeah, interesting, interesting. Yeah, so Jay's saying you only need a thin layer of the pellets because they're super absorbent. They are. That sort of touches back on what I said, that with pellets, you end up doing these spot cleans because literally they pee on them and they absorb in that location. So there's a lot of spot cleaning going on. For people who are wanting to, and this is important because the amount of cleaning that you do on your guinea pig cage very much depends on what the substrate is. So if you're using shavings, and I recommend a paper layer at the bottom, But if you're using that combination, you don't need to clean. If you've got a decent amount of space, you would look at cleaning your cage once a week, possibly doing a spot clean once or twice in a little area if it was used a lot. Okay. But if you're using any sort of fabric in your cage, you need to be changing that every 2 days. So the washing and the cleaning of the cage becomes much more regular if you're using fleece and cloth. And if people don't do this, that's when they have fungal starting to form and other issues creep up. So I don't know how to pronounce your name, KH, so I'll call you KH. We use towels with IKEA fleece mats on top. Good. It needs sweeping, cleaning often, but one of our piggies might have dust allergies, so we manage. Okay. Tell me more about what you're thinking with your dust allergies. And we have a video on allergies with guinea pigs that you really should take a look at, KH, because I think it's probably more related to identifying what the issue is. And if you have a look at that, we show you how to do that. But towels, being that middle or bottom absorbent level, perfect with your fleece on top. As long as your fleece is wicked and washed many times before you use it, the urine will go through, which is great. Thank you, Gabby. Okay, Jake says uses fleece liners because they have a long haired girl and shavings get caught in fur. Yeah, absolutely. So you can have that as a consideration. Definitely is the type of guinea pig coat that you're dealing with and what works best for them. So it's this, we can't have a black and white scenario where someone says this is what you need to use and only what you need to use, because there's so many factors come into what works well for you. Consider cages that are indoors that are purpose built, for example. And so these cages may be in an L shape. So looking at how that best fits the mechanics of the room where they're in, it may be that these have to be hand sewn and made for that space. So all these considerations have to come into play. Yeah, well done. Well done. There we go. Imagine being 11 and keeping 7 guinea pigs. Oh, the more the merrier. Robert, hello. Robert says, I use big fleece pads mats from Guinea Dad, yeah, with smaller pads in the spots where the guinea pigs spend a lot of time. Excellent. That's exactly what sort of what we do. We don't use the Guinea Dad fleece. They're very popular. A lot of people use them, but I think for the greater majority of people, they find them too expensive. And certainly here in Australia, the cost of having them sent here to Australia, it can be astronomical. It can be, $150 for a fleece that fits the size of a cage. And for a lot of people, that can be an enormous amount. Whereas these, which are my favorite, in fact, for people in Australia, go to Kmart. You can get these $6, so there are ways of looking after your guinea pigs which are less expensive, but they will both do the same thing. So what we're after here is that the guinea pigs are on a really soft substrate, which at the top layer is dry and it falls through to your absorbent layers at the bottom. So yeah, Guinea Dad is a great product. Great product. Love that product, but the affordability is a stopping point for a lot of people. You mentioned an important point there, Robert, and that is having little mats where guinea pigs sit, because that is really important. You'll find that some guinea pigs have preferred spaces that they like to be, and you can make mats or sew them, create them, whatever you would like to do in those areas. So you can then just take those out as a change for that location. It works super, super well. We find, and I'm going back to vet bed here, because vet bed, let me pull some out. Oh, vet bed, which is this, it's very thick. It was very popular for a while, but I don't like it because it's too big. It's enormous when you put it in cages, and it becomes sort of unmanageable in the sense that your washing machine will do half the job and you have to do the other half, as with fleece, before you wash it because so much gets stuck. Look at what's sticking on here. Can I put it right up to the camera? It gets stuck to the fleece. It just gets stuck in there. So you have to brush that off, groom that, shake that, get that into your wash. There's quite a bit of effort in maintaining something like this. However, what I recommend with VetBed is actually making these small little squares that you can put into and out of little areas. So if you're using bubble mats as the main area, you can have one of these in under a hide where the guinea pigs are sitting. And they love that. But because it's smaller, it's much more manageable and easy to look after. So it's little ideas like this that will give you tips and tricks. It's put, sorry, it's just dropped little bits of all over my keyboard. Right, okay. And that's the problem. So, yeah, so changing those every now and then is really good. Having those mats, Robert, absolutely fantastic use and idea. So, Jake's got an L shaped cage. Excellent. So, you've got to account for that area. Oh, thank you, Marsha. She's popped that allergies video up into the link. Take a look at that because if you're worried about guinea pigs with allergies, that is something you definitely need to be aware of. Okay, so Jay uses a combination of bedding primarily to keep the cost of bedding down. Shavings aren't cheap here and fleece is reusable. Yes, very good. Couple of things. You can try with shavings. We purchase shavings in an enormous way. We have masses of them. But if you go to your produce stores rather than your pet shops, you'll find them at a much more affordable price. The shavings that we have are in enormous big bales. They're like a bale of hay. I'm looking at one just now. And because of that, they are much more affordable than buying the little packets off the shelf at your pet shop. So maybe find out where your produce stores are, wherever you are in the world. They're the people that supply horses and sheep with various foods. So find out where they are and ask if they've got kiln dried shavings. Usually they keep those as well, and you'll find they're really affordable in that way. Now, Jay mentions an important point there, which is fleece is reusable. So the shavings, you're going to use them and throw them out. The fleece is reusable, which is really good. So you're not constantly repurchasing the shavings, which is, fantastic. You're saving money with that. You are having to deal with the washing. So you've got one upside, one downside, but the cost aspect is also different. The other thing I would mention is that shavings are compostable. So if you have a compost area for your garden, you can compost whatever comes out of your guinea pig cage. So that's another way to actually offset, I guess, some of the use to make it a dual purpose. For us here, we actually have a group of people who look at gardening, and they're a big group. Biodynamic, I'm not trying to think of the name, but they actually take a lot of that material from us, which is great. They then use it organically on the garden to compost it and make and improve their garden beds. So again, a little bit for the environment there. Now, one thing I didn't mention in all of those images was actually for outside cages, and I have some of it here I want to share with you. Let me pull it out before I knock everything else off. Okay, and this is false grass. Now, I see this being put into cages because people like the look of it. Guinea pigs have outdoor cages, and look, there's lots of problems with that. Go back to the discussion on caging as to what works well and so on. But cages that are in the middle of grassed areas, and people generally start out thinking they're going to move it every day to give them fresh grass, they soon find that it becomes a chore. And anything that becomes a chore becomes work and again starts to get neglected over other priorities. So we need to, when you're establishing a guinea pig house, make sure that it's set up in such a way that cleaning can be done easily and well. And part of that is that your housing is in one place. Don't have it mobile like that. If you want guinea pigs to have grass time, take them out for an hour or two grass time, then bring them back in. Do that, and then it's under your control as to how long and where they are. But if you're planning on moving entire cages around, the risk of hurting feet, catching guinea pigs first, moving it, it all becomes a chore, and we find it fails ultimately with people. But coming back to this false grass, the reason people started using that is because guinea pigs will eat any grass underneath that area and it soon looks like dried sections. And if you put this in, it looks lovely and green. I don't recommend it. I do not recommend this. And the reason is it's artificial. Guinea pigs nibble many things, and if they nibble this, it is artificial. So it's not food and it can potentially cause gut issues. So I don't like using this artificial grass. The other thing is it's not absorbent. It's actually wherever they urinate on top, it's got a plastic undercoated layer, so the urine stays there. And if you imagine a guinea pig walking on that and they hit an area that's been urinated on, they're going to step in it. So people who use this artificially within cages, we always find they have fungal outbursts that occur later. So please, yeah, don't go down that path at all. I'll sort of sway you now if I can. Okay, so Jay says by produce stores, do you mean feed stores? Yes, yes. So we call them produce stores here in Australia, in Sydney. So you might call them feed stores, usually for cattle, horses, sheep. That's what you're looking for, a feed store, cattle store. And they usually keep massive bags of shavings on hand. And it's very affordable. When you purchase it that way, here we pay about $22 for a massive bale, which is, it's like a bale of hay. It's massive. But if we were to purchase the same thing from a pet store, we'd probably have to buy 10 of them at about $15 each. So the price difference is enormous. Yeah, but as a rescue, we look at things like that. So try sourcing a feed store to find that. Great. So we've got lots of discussions there about food. Okay. I don't really have anything else to add. You can actually create your own. Well, I do. always chatty. Well, okay. There. One second. Okay. You can create your own bedding, and that's actually what we do for our hospital cages. But for our hospital cages, we have them purpose built. So we have fleece on one side, like this, and on the other, attached to it, we have toweling. So that's the absorbent layer. So fleece, toweling, and then we put a layer of paper underneath. We find that this works really well. But again, it's actually in the hospital cage size, which I'll hold it up here. That's a hospital cage size. So it goes in really well into the cages that we have. We can quickly change that and make animals really comfortable. And then into there, we would then put, Heidi's little pads for them to go and sit on and be comfortable with. Gabby's Cabbies, how long have you been keeping guinea pigs? Well, I've actually had animals my entire life. The rescue has been operating 20 years. So, yeah, when I look back, my work life history is in computing, but in terms of the rescue, 20 years running Cavi Central, when we look at my history growing up, I was always bringing animals home. My goodness, everything. And I've done a great deal with wildlife as well in the last 20 years. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it. It is a long time. Only half your life. Wow. Okay. Um, yeah, look, guinea pigs are an amazing animal. It's there's different videos that I talk about the history of Cavi Central, how we started, but essentially it was a need. So 20 years ago, there was no rescue here in Sydney for guinea pigs, and that's why it fell into alignment, and it's become what it is today. So it was enormous. Yeah. What time is it there? It is now 11:20 in the morning. So we've been chatting now for just on an hour, and it's PM when Gabby is awesome. So different people, different time zones. Thank you everyone for joining me today. I hope that you have learnt about a lot of different choices. Some you may have seen, some you may have used, and look at some of the reasons why we choose those. Um, if you have questions after or you're watching this live stream later, please put your questions and comments down below because I do love your questions and comments. I go through them and I answer them wherever I can. And yeah, if you've got specific questions on that, we can then touch on that on future videos. So I hope these two videos together, last week was looking at the housing and the caging, the physical size. Today we've been looking at the bedding and the substrate. These two videos work together really well for anyone that is considering getting guinea pigs as pets and how you're going to set them up. Okay, so I'm going to wish you all a good day and I will see you on the next video. Thank you for supporting the work we do here. I love seeing you. I love this community. I love chatting with you and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care everyone and bye for now.